Well, welcome one and all. This will be a very cerebral discussion, mostly because it's a discussion between two mostly cerebral individuals. One who's bald and wrong about everything, and the other one who is a savant of some kind, maybe, I don't know. At least he's a very smart young man, aren't you, Edward?
I avoid saying things about myself like that. I will let other people decide whether they
Very
believe that or
smart.
not.
What I
But
did then?
yeah.
Hey, listen, before
Um,
we get going, caveats to this discussion. You sent me a message saying, here's an email you should read before this session. I have not had the opportunity to do that. I think that's okay, though, because at the end of the day, I would like my responses to this discussion to be non-contrived. I want them to be completely off the cuff with no forewarning. The only forewarning I've had really is a brief discussion we had several weeks ago, which is largely in the midst of time now. Apparently, I mean, you can introduce it, but tell me if I've got this wrong, but you've had a quite in-depth discussion with another idiot by the name of AI regarding some of the things that I've said previously about physics, chemistry, acid-base control, and etc. And you thought it was amusing.
yeah. I'll give a little bit of a brief backstory because I think this is important to understanding the context here. So years ago, whenever I was learning about carnivore and I discovered you, I was looking at a lot of your old lessons that you had previously uploaded publicly on your channel. And one of the first ones was about electrophysiology. A certain field of study. And at the time, I had no idea what the hell you were talking about. I said, I'll save that for later. I'll just bookmark that for later.
Yes, electrophysiology, not acid base. Good. Okay. Get that one right.
Right. Yeah. So I bookmarked that. Oh, what happened?
You've disappeared.
I've disappeared.
Come back to us, Eddie. Come back to us.
Yeah. Just a second. Was
it something I said? I stand by all comments. There you go. Hey.
Yeah. But yeah, I bookmarked it for later and I went on studying other things. But later I eventually realized that it was very important to study a field of, I wouldn't say it's a field of science, but it's a section of chemistry, which is acid-base balance. Which is extremely important for understanding how the bodily fluids they're very let's just say that they're not very susceptible to changing with your diet very much in terms of their pH level. And so I realized the importance of that, but it ended up bleeding into a field of science known as electrophysiology, and we're going to explain why that is. Basically, electrophysiology, and of course you can correct me if I'm wrong as well. You've actually done some research, I believe, in this field yourself. So yeah. So electrophysiology is sort of the general field of science that suggests that we have sort of we have voltages that occur in cells to be sort of brief. We specifically within cell membranes, and those have effects on gating, is what they call it. So there's different channels in the body that open and close for ion flux, influx, efflux, depending on the voltage and the electrochemical gradient, which aren't exactly the same, but they sort of are talked about both pretty frequently in the field of study. Yeah. And the reason why it's quite contentious when you talk about it, Bart, which is it's relatively rare that you and I talk about it because you can usually get around talking about it without, you can avoid talking about it, but sometimes you can't. But the reason it's so contentious is because we understand the Stewart model of acid base is based on electroneutrality. It's based on a fundamental law of physics. That's why it's the model that you teach and the model that I teach in my currently worked on biochemistry course right now. It's based on a fundamental law of physics, which is why I think we have an affinity towards it. It's based on first principles, right? And the reason why that's important is because if you have ions that flow in and out of a cell, inside the cell fluid to the outside, the extracellular fluid, or vice versa, you're going to have changes in pH according to its charge value in coulombs, right? The strong ion difference is the one that's the metric that's really concerned here.
Yes.
And so electrophysiology, whenever most people talk about it, they will talk about polarization and depolarization of cell membranes. This is one of the most common things that's talked about. Polarization, an increase in increase in negative charge, and then hyperpolarization or depolarization is the increase in the positive charges and all that stuff. And so as soon as I would encounter things like this when talking about voltage gated ion channels or whatever, I thought to myself, well, that can't be right, because a cell fluid can only be 0 in terms of its net charge at all times.
Yes.
At the very least, very, 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 very approximately 0, like 0.00000, something that is so low that the charge differential is not powerful enough to cause massive discharges of current, because that's really what's being preserved. Yeah. And so really it's 0. It's 0. And so what I wanted to do today is actually go through some of the arguments that ChatGPT specifically has provided against, quote unquote, to prove or disprove what you're saying, what you and I say about this, because I think that there is some nuance that does need to be discussed that we can be willing to sort of concede points on, quote unquote, concede. But really, there's a lot more. I think it goes beyond what the evidence actually shows.
More than concede, what I'm prepared to do, as ever and always, is accept as correct that which is,
right,
and give it a context while I'm at it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I don't concede anything. I'm the science guy. I'm safe and effective, and no one should ever question the science.
Yeah.
Yeah. Safe and effective.
Safe and effective. Yeah. So. Yeah, and the reason that I was arguing with ChatGPT about this is I like to test its accuracy. I think that it is a very powerful tool. The problem is people are using it improperly. They're using it as sort of a repository, or they're using it as they're treating it as something omniscient.
They're treating it as an authority.
Yeah, they're treating it as an authority. They're treating it as something that they're treating it as something that actually reasons when it doesn't. Yeah. And so I like to test its accuracy, and I think it is a very powerful tool, but again, it has its limitations. So basically what I did was I provided it with all the stuff that we talk about. I was very brief, and I know it might not sound like I was, but I was, because there's a lot here. And I provided it with all of it, and now it's going through what it agrees with, what it says that it agrees with, what it says is correct, and what it says is an overstep. So we're gonna read what it says from the beginning. So it says, where I agree with him. It's actually it's focusing on you right now, the professor, right? Yeah. Where I agree with him. Yeah. Number 1. Yeah. He's right to attack reification. Okay. Yeah. A mathematical variable is not automatically a mechanism. Fitting an equation to data does not prove that every term in the equation corresponds to a separately measured physical process.
Example: calories in, calories out.
Right, exactly. That's actually, you mentioned that in the previous call we had. I think it was a good example.
Did I?
The distinction between calories and mass.
God, I'm predictable, aren't I? Yeah. Yes. So putting a mathematical variable on a mathematical variable, putting it into a sum, working that sum out and saying this sum is correct and applies in the objective reality that we find ourselves in, does not explain it.
Yeah, exactly.
The phenomenon. Another example of describing a phenomenon with no explanation whatsoever: E equals mc squared.
Yeah,
it is correct. Well, it turns out it's approximately correct, near enough correct under most circumstances, day-to-day use, right? But it does not explain itself. It just says this is related to that by this function. Okay, good. Carry on.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So that is a legitimate criticism of oversimplified physiology teaching. Statements such as the sodium-potassium pump makes the inside negative. We already covered this. Electricity flows through the nerve. Yeah, right. Electricity flows through the nerve like a wire. Lactic acid causes Lactic acid causes fatigue.
No, it doesn't.
Bicarbonate directly absorbs the acid.
No, it doesn't.
Are at best compressed teaching language. At best, compressed teaching language. They can become actively misleading.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's not teaching then anymore, is it? If you mislead people, you're not teaching them anything.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
He's also right that a terminology paper defining dipole potential or electrical double layer is not evidence that a particular field of a particular magnitude exists in a living membrane.
Correct.
So It's so far got your. I think it's pretty impressive how it is conveying your position properly. So at least it's got that right. He is right about the importance of chemical gradients.
Yep.
So concentration gradients are not incidental to electrophysiology; they're indispensable. The Nernst and Goldman descriptions do not replace concentration gradients with electricity. They describe a combined electrochemical driving force. So he is therefore right to object if someone talks as though voltage alone pushes ions while concentrations do nothing.
Right. Okay. So stop there for a moment.
Okay. Yeah.
The argument there for those that are going like, what the hell are we talking about? Here's what it is.
Yeah.
The argument that's put forward by consensus and therefore by ChatGPT is that the law that we're applying to this, or the concept that we're applying to this, is that energy is fungible, which is correct. Standalone. That's a true statement. Ergo, one form of energy is no different from any other form of energy except in the unit of measurement of that form of energy and the particular effect it's having on our objective reality as we see that at that time. That does not mean that describing one form of energy as if it were another form of energy is correct. It isn't.
Right.
It's like saying, my New Zealand dollar is exactly the same as a greenback US dollar. Sure, we can interconvert them by a conversion ratio. The US dollar is worth more than the New Zealand dollar by a given amount. We can convert them. Absolutely, they're fungible. I can go to the bank and change those. That doesn't mean the human body, in reality, has the kit, the equipment, the means to translate the form of energy from one form to another. An electrochemical gradient of a given ionic species across a membrane is not the same thing as a voltage across, an electrical voltage across that membrane. They are not the same thing, and they should not be described as such. What the Nernst equation does is exactly that. It describes the net electrochemical gradient differences across a membrane as if they were a voltage.
As if they were a voltage, yeah. And that's what you said a few years ago too, in that lesson. It was almost, I feel like it was almost a decade ago at this point. So yeah.
God, I've been teaching this for
pretty consistent.
several decades.
Yeah.
And being told I'm wrong for several decades on it. And nobody has yet been able to establish in factuality using any first principle of science, chemistry, basic physics that I am in fact incorrect. I'm still waiting. Sorry, I just needed to make that clear so that people don't go like, what the hell are these two talking about? That's what we're talking about.
It's going to become more clear as I continue reading as well, because there's a reason why we're talking about charges versus quote unquote voltage, which even that is technically different, even within the right framing of electricity, right? And so once we get to that point, I'll elaborate further, or you can as well, of course. You can interject. So number 3, he's right to demand physiological relevance. So a dried lipid preparation dissolved in chloroform and reconstructed on a solid support is not equivalent to an intact living cell. So this is what we talk about all the time with human nutrition science, isolating islet cells from rats and soaking them in glucose and then trying to inform upon whether fat is going to cause you to have type 1 diabetes or something. I mean, this is the science that is done by journals like the American Diabetes Association. It's pathetic. Yeah, it's really bad. So such systems can establish physical possibility and isolate variables, but they require external validation. So his question, does this occur in a living membrane, is completely reasonable. Number 4, this is the last one that it says what it's agreeing with you on. Parts of his acid-base position are strong. Of course, it's going to be a little anodyne here.
But
right. Yeah. The Stewart framework is useful. It's not correct. It's useful for forcing the analyst to account simultaneously for strong ions, weak acids, carbon dioxide, mass balance, charge balance, and chemical equilibria. His broader point that H plus and HCO3 cannot be understood independently of the whole solution is sound. His rejection of the simplistic lactate causes acidity and fatigue story is also much stronger than the corresponding conventional caricature. Where his central argument fails. Here you go. Are you ready?
My failures. Let me hear about my failures.
Yes. Okay.
Well, when I was young, carry on. Go on.
Number 1, some of this is a surprise to me too, because I did a cursory review of this. Okay, so number 1, electroneutrality does not imply equal electrical potential. So this is where we get into the conversation between charge and then quote unquote voltage, right? Because voltage is the chemical potential energy per unit of charge that exists in a fluid pool, and then the total charge is a different story. It's like the amount of it, right? So this is the fundamental error. Net charge is total amount, right? Okay.
Of what?
Is total amount. Voltage is energy per unit charge between two locations. There are different physical quantities.
Yes.
So
hang
already,
on. Either energy is fungible as per the Nernst equation, or it isn't.
Right. So this is the point.
Tripped itself up, hasn't it?
This is the point where this is the point where we should realize what's actually going on, which is that it is continuing to use a word that is you already clarified this with your example with the New Zealand dollar and the American dollar. It's continuing to use language that is sort of, again, it's regarding language, or regarding energy, which is quote unquote interconvertible between forms, but it's not exactly in the practical sense going to be doing that. Which is exactly what's going on, and it's insisting upon using this language still, and it's trying to reconcile these two arguments, but oftentimes it does so because it's quote unquote prideful, and what happens is it will just start hallucinating and getting things completely wrong and contradicting itself. So
quite human-like, really, isn't it?
It is. It's almost, it's trained on the same type of
maybe James de Nicolantonio is involved in training the thing. Who knows?
Yeah. So, okay. So anyway, next statement. Yeah. Even if the bulk fluids on both sides, so the intracellular fluid and the extracellular fluid, have effectively zero charge density, it doesn't follow that their potentials are equal.
Right.
In electrostatic form, and then it gives a formula, which now that it's formatted into the email, I can't exactly read it, nor do we even really need to read it. It provides a formula for this. In electrostatic form, whatever. If the bulk charge density is zero, the result is Laplace's equation, which I suppose, you're familiar with that yourself, right? Yeah. Laplace's equation? Okay. That doesn't require the electric field to be zero. Boundary conditions can sustain a non-zero field through a charge-free region. The interior dielectric of an ordinary capacitor is the elementary example.
Yes, except cells are not capacitors, and they do not capacitate electrical charge.
Yeah,
it's the wrong analogy. This is a mathematical analogy according to the two equations that you've just dropped into the equation, the two additional ones, both of which make the fundamental error of imagining themselves, for want of a better term, as being an externally valid description of reality rather than describing an equivalence according to the fungibility of energy law. That's all that's going on here. It's just a way of suggesting that I'm wrong because here's a sum that doesn't agree with what I've said apparently.
Yeah, but ultimately it still comes down to the same distinction between calories and mass. I think that's a really good example because you're talking about something that technically it's you can transfer this form of energy into a different form, but and therefore it's fungible. But it doesn't mean that that you're consuming calories. It doesn't mean that the body is actually using calories in its electron transport chain, right? So we have an electron transport chain which has mass, despite it almost having none, but it still does, compared to calories. We don't have a calorie transport chain.
Absolutely.
So it's
to boil down in its most simple form, the things that are different on one side of a so-called polarized membrane and the other side of that so-called polarized membrane are ostensibly a different concentration of sodium, potassium, and chloride.
Yeah.
Everything else is pretty incidental and pretty much, at orders of magnitude lower concentrations, they have no effect to speak of. Those are the three ionic balances that differ from one side of the cell to the other side of the cell membrane. And it's the driving force of those electrochemical gradients, those ionic species gradients wanting to equalize, that drives what is called electrophysiology and described as being analogous to, equivalent to a voltage in terms of millivolts of electricity, which it still is not.
Well, not to mention the fact that the electrodes that are used to even establish what these gradients are, what these voltages are, the electrodes, the silver and silver chloride electrodes actually introduce artifacts themselves, which actually skews the reading that you even see in the millivolt form.
Would you like me to explain that one briefly in English?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, definitely.
Right. When you put an electrode, a voltmeter with an electrode on either end, across a cell, a polarized cell, it reads, in the case of a human muscle cell, something like negative 70 millivolts, the negative being convention describing the voltage on one side of the membrane versus the other side. And what that then suggests is, look, we are measuring a voltage across this membrane. We're describing a voltage via this Nernst equation with these other equations to support the equivalence of what we're talking about. What am I talking about? Bad bald man, silly boy. Of course it is. There it is. We've measured it. Okay. What that fails to understand completely is that the voltage being read by the voltmeter, the electrical voltage, is being generated by the silver chloride, usually electrodes, that are used to measure the voltage. What are those electrodes doing? They are converting the concentration gradient difference of chloride across that membrane into a voltage. That's the kit that's making the change.
Via the redox couple on the
Correct.
via redox couple.
There isn't an actual voltage there. How do I know? You take the electrodes off the end of the copper micro wires on the end of these, on either end of this voltmeter, and you put those across the membrane, and it reads exactly 0. Why? Because, well, ChatGPT said it wrong there. It said if the net charge in positive and negative charges on either side of the membrane is 0. It's not an if. That is a fact.
It has to be.
It is the law of electroneutrality. It is a case-limited, specific example of the conservation of energy, which itself is actually incorrect, but that's for another day. It should be called the law of local conservation of energy, because actually universally energy is not conserved. How do I know? Red shift. Done. Finish. End of discussion. That said, that's what's going on here. A concentration gradient differential of chloride, in this case, being measured across that membrane, is being read by 2 electrodes, which, as an output, they generate an electrical voltage, which the voltmeter reads. The voltage is not there. It's being created by the electrodes. I hope that's really clear.
Yeah. And the other ion that is usually involved in electrophysiology is not precisely involved in actually opening or shutting the gates. It happens to be the ion that's stimulating things inside of a cell. So, for example, beta cells secrete insulin. There's voltage gating there, right? Voltage gating. And what that involves is a potassium pump, a K ATP pump. So it's ATP gated. But once the K plus, actually the flux changes, the electrochemical gradient in the membrane changes, and then it allows for calcium ions from the extracellular fluid to flow into the cell, which then stimulates the insulin granules to create insulin and secrete the insulin. So calcium itself is not involved, because it is not a strong ion itself. Calcium is not involved in the regulation of the gating, whether like opening and shutting it. It's just involved in stimulating things inside the cell once it's allowed to flow in through a gate. It's all gated really it's all influenced by potassium in the case of beta cells. Same thing really with glucagon, but sodium does play a role with alpha cells as well, which is where glucagon is secreted. So ultimately it does, like you said, come down to the strong ions, because those ones have the strongest charge. I mean, they're strong ions.
To clarify that, what I was suggesting earlier is that the ions that are involved in the so-called voltage itself.
Yeah.
Potassium, sodium, and chloride. Right?
Yeah.
All the other ones are, again, at orders of magnitude lower concentrations that are not going to make a difference to a hill of beans anyway, but they are specific speciations of ions that are responded to by the body's receptors to make specific things occur, like calcium-activated calcium release in the sarcoplasmic reticulum of muscle cells, for example. And then they talk about voltage-gated channels. Well, okay, let's talk about voltage-gated channels. Again, how do you know this is a voltage-gated channel? Oh, well, because we applied a voltage and they opened. How did you do that?
Yeah.
And how did you measure that voltage? Was it with a silver electric?
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. Again, you can transfer or translate this energy, transform it into a different form, but you can't say that the original form that you imposed onto it, whenever it was changed into a different one, was the form that is actually affecting the cell.
Yeah.
It's the new thing that you've affected, because
that is not a spade. That is a small
Right.
plastic fork. And that's what we should describe it as.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. So I'll continue here, but I think we may have already covered this pretty well. So,
Okay.
but I think this is going to be pretty insightful for people to understand how just because AI can sound really intelligent by using big words doesn't exactly mean that its general idea, its general conclusion is correct. Just as a brief side note before I continue reading, it actually did this whenever I was talking about it with talking with it about the Stewart model of acid base, because it's fixated on the whole, the Bronsted-Lowry acids, the Henderson-Hasselbalch equation, and it's treating H plus as an independent variable, and also treating SID is basically irrelevant. I mean, you talk about how whether sodium will impact pH, and it'll just say no because Na plus doesn't have H plus alongside it. So it's just ridiculous. But whenever I was arguing with it about it, it was saying that I said, okay, great, ChatGPT. So what happens whenever chloride, or whenever you consume sodium chloride or potassium chloride, and potassium or sodium is pumped into a cell and Cl minus is kept out? Can't enter any equilibrium, because really no equilibria in a stomach fluid, for example, involves chloride. So something has to happen. Something has to adjust, or else you explode. That's what happens, or at least
sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it said, again, this is what happens whenever you tell ChatGPT something that contradicts what it's saying. Instead of admitting that it was wrong, sometimes it will, but most of the time, in my experience, instead of admitting it was wrong, it'll try and reconcile the two things that it's saying. So the thing that it's saying and the thing that you're saying, and as a result, it just hallucinates. So it told me that, well, look, electroneutrality is still preserved even if Cl minus is pumped out, or sodium is pumped out and Cl minus is kept inside. And I go, well, how
does that work?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what ChatGPT said. ChatGPT says the reason why is because when sodium gets pumped out of a cell, or really inside the cell, the cell is now technically at that one instant point in time, it's more positive, and on the outside, it's more negative. If you sum the positive and the negative together, you get zero.
Except when I went to school, 0 and 0 are the same quantity necessarily.
No, I understand. What it's saying is more stupid than what you think it's saying. It is saying, imagine you have 2 glasses of water, and theoretically you were able to put you take a sodium ion out of one of the water glasses and you put it into the other side. It said electroneutrality is preserved because if you add the 2 glasses together, it equals 0. And I went, that's stupid, because that's not what electroneutrality means.
Oh my God. Seriously?
It has to be preserved in each fluid pool. That's what the law tells you.
That's
so you can't just...
Yeah, not universally, it's locally in that fluid pool. Yes, correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, I'll get
Stuff
it.
Is telling me.
Very stupid.
Yeah, it's very smart and very stupid. Yeah. It's really weird how it works. But
so for those that don't know what the law of electroneutrality states, it states this: the net electrochemical charge of all positive and negative electrochemical charges in any fluid pool anywhere in the universe at any time and at all times under all circumstances is necessarily 0. That is the law of electroneutrality. And it's not called the theory of electroneutrality. It's not called the...
It's the law.
Hypothesis of. It's the law. It's a first principle. It is derived from the false idea, actually, that energy is conserved universally, which it isn't, as I referred to earlier. But it is correct to state that energy is conserved locally. And that's what we're referring to.
Yeah. And it's based on Coulomb's force, which suggests that even relatively small changes in charge result in massive discharges of current.
Correct.
I mean, it's very that's Coulomb's force, right? That's based on fundamental laws of the universe, which is why it's the superior model. The acid-base balance Stewart model is the superior model,
and
it's invariably correct.
Antonio, did you hear that, son? See, a young man like Edward with no formal training understands this better than you do. How's that, son? Good, isn't it? All right, sorry. Carry on, Edward.
All right. Yeah, let's read this. So, more importantly, the standard biological claim is not that the membrane potential is produced by a large charge throughout the intracellular fluid. It is produced by a minute excess of charge confined near the membrane, with the rest of the solution remaining overwhelmingly electroneutral.
Right.
So now it just made another claim.
Right.
Is
So
making
now,
another claim.
now it's talking about the fourth phase of water, easy water, exclusion zone water. Sometimes it's called formed water or structured water.
Yeah, talk about that. I'm curious to hear what
But
your thoughts
at
are on
the end
that.
of the day, here's the thing. If you have a fine layer of structured water right at a membrane, which I'm perfectly happy to accept as a very real possibility physically, and that membrane of formed water does hold a particular electrochemical charge net, which is different from that of the rest of the fluid pool, the rest of the fluid pool will react to that automatically, immediately, within less than 1/1,000,000th of 1 second to equilibrate that charge, because the law of electroneutrality still applies. So there is
Yeah.
no difference in the net electrochemical charge in the fluid pool, whether or not exclusion zone water exists and functions as such. It makes
Yeah.
no difference to the argument. It's a complete red herring.
Yeah.
And the net electrochemical charge in the fluid pool will be zero, as will the electrochemical charge on the other side of the membrane in the extracellular space. That will be zero as well. And when I went to school, 0 minus 0 or 0 plus 0 is 0. Ergo, the
Right. Yeah.
voltage, the electrical voltage across that membrane is still 0. And the only way to impose a voltage on that is to convert the net speciations, the net electrochemical charges of the different ionic species, into a voltage as if it was a voltage by using a piece of kit that turns that into a voltage. Example, silver electrode, silver chloride electrodes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm still correct, absolutely correct, fundamentally correct from the first principles of physics upwards, and ChatGPT is just making noise.
Yeah.
Still,
No,
it's hallucinating.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah, carry on.
For a roughly 10 micrometer cell, a conventional capacitance estimate gives only about 1 million monovalent ions needed to support 70 millivolts, approximately 0.003% of the intracellular ions. The stored energy is on the femtojoule scale. That calculation does not prove that 70 millivolts exists, but it decisively answers his Coulomb explosion objection, which actually, you mentioned it, and then also you mentioned it in the lesson, but also
Let's be clear on that one. Just to be very, very clear, not only is ChatGTP hallucinating, it's also misquoting me. It was not me that said explosion. I specifically did not use the word explosion. And when you used it a few minutes ago, I said, well, hang on, what we're talking about is an electrical discharge, not an explosion.
Right. It's the explosion is not really, you wouldn't literally explode like a bomb was going off inside your body or something.
Depends
If
on
a
how much
charge,
voltage really
depends. Right. Yeah. But this is what I was going to say, is that the Coulomb explosion objection, this is based on our last call. It is conflating what I said with what you said.
And also, it's attributing that to me. No, it was Peter Stewart that said that would occur, and he was correct.
Right. Yeah.
The late Peter Stewart suggested that there would be an electrical discharge if a difference in electrochemical charge were allowed to exist in a given fluid pool, which it still isn't. That's why it doesn't happen. All of that just supports the law of electroneutrality as being correct. Good. Okay, what's next?
The conventional model does not require a dangerous macroscopic charge imbalance. So, it's just repeating itself.
So what?
Experimentally, nanometer scale interfacial charge and dipolar distributions are an established electrochemical phenomenon.
Good. So I'm wrong because it's established. How?
IUPAC's double layer definition.
Well, first of all, you need to define something to make it true. Yes. Then what?
Explicitly includes surface charge, countercharge, and oriented dipoles.
Right. So because a model includes various parameters and is published, does that make that model correct? Because there are many people who have published a model that says calories in, calories out, haven't they? And that's
Right. Yeah,
demonstrably
exactly.
incorrect from first principles, as is this idea that there is, in fact, a capacitance or an electrical difference, a potential electrical discharge, a voltage across the membrane, because it still isn't there. Saying it's there using a model and publishing that model doesn't make it there suddenly. It still isn't.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. What's next?
But I agree with him that the definition alone is not proof of a cellular field.
There you go.
The important evidence comes from living preparations and independent field-sensitive measurements. Okay, so this is when we start getting into the experimental stuff. It starts citing experiments.
Measurements of what?
Right.
Voltage?
Yeah.
So how's the voltage measured, Edward?
Let's find out. So number 2, the voltage clamp evidence is experimental, not merely mathematical. So that was the original objection. And now it's saying, no, there actually are experiments. Okay. The Hodgkin-Huxley equations came after extensive interventions on living squid axons. Investigators held the membrane at controlled potentials.
Yep. By doing what?
Right. There you go. That's the key, isn't it? It's a rhetorical question, really, at the end of the day, because we have already covered that. Changed the imposed potential while maintaining controlled ionic solutions.
By what means?
I don't even know if it actually says it verbally here or in written form. I don't think so. I'm actually looking. I don't think it does.
So that last sentence that you just said, say that exact sentence again.
Changed the imposed potential while maintaining controlled ionic solutions.
How did they do that? Still.
Yeah, it doesn't actually show it. So I can it does link it though. So I can here, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
Let's open this up real quick.
And how did they establish that that's in fact what they did do? Or are they just claiming to have done something that they actually didn't?
Right, yeah. The experimental method was based on that of Cole and Marmont and consisted in measuring the flow of current through a definitive area of the membrane of a giant axon.
The flow of current was measured? How did they measure the flow of current across an axon when there is no current flowing across the axon?
I'm looking through the paper. I don't even know if they list that here. The 2 internal electrodes consisting of fine silver wires were thrust down the axis of the fiber for a distance of about 30 millimeters. There it is. There it is. Right.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming.
One of those electrodes recorded the membrane potential, and the feedback amplifier regulated the current entering the other electrode in such a way as to change the membrane potential suddenly and hold it at the new level. That's what they did. That was their methodology.
Right.
So it's just providing us with experiments that are showing that they're showing that we're basically we're right about this. It's an electrochemical gradient and not a, it's an electrochemical gradient along with concentration gradients influencing travel between different gates or whatever.
Yeah.
And not an actual voltage. That's what we're dealing with.
Small plastic fork.
Yeah. Now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this stuff. What fun.
Okay. So now. Yeah. With an average membrane capacitance near 0.9 micro.
Measured how?
Whatever, per centimeter squared, whatever. I don't really care about the measurement. More importantly, the ionic current changed sign and time course. What was that?
Exactly. How did they measure the potential? You said you don't care. I don't really either. It was just one of those things to throw out. Carry on.
Yeah. It was a measurement. Yeah, it was a measure. A concentration only account cannot explain reversal of flux while the concentration gradient remains in the same direction. So that's probably the only thing that I would say, okay, so that shows that concentration gradients aren't the only factor. The electrochemical aspect of it is also important, because what they're doing is with those silver and silver chloride electrodes, they're showing that you can actually keep concentration gradients in one specific way and actually make ions flow against the concentration gradient if you change the electrochemical gradient.
If you apply a voltage, if you generate a voltage and apply it to it, yeah, absolutely.
If you
because ions will respond to electricity. But that's not what the axon is doing in the squid or any other animal as a function of its biological existence. It's living. It's not producing electricity. In fact, what happens if you apply an electrical voltage to a living being does damage, depending on how much the voltage is and how long it's applied for. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Their
So
later
it's
equations.
An irrelevancy. Yeah. Whose equations now?
Yeah. They're Hodgkin, Huxley, and Katz's primary current voltage experiment. Yeah. Their later equations can be criticized as phenomenological, but their current voltage relationships were measured first, and we already covered how they were measured. So there you go. The correct challenge for Mr. K here is not the equation assumes voltage. It is, how does a concentration-only theory explain experimentally reversing an ion's flux by changing the imposed field without reversing its concentration ratio?
It doesn't, neither does it attempt to.
He needs a quantitative alternative for that observation.
I don't need any such thing at all. No. Why would I need such a thing? Why?
I think it's because it's now...
Number one, the Stewart model explains what does occur and why it does occur. It does not propose to say anything about what happens when you change the situation by artificially doing something that does not occur in nature, i.e. applying an electrical charge using electrodes across a membrane to see what that does to the flow of ions, which of course are going to respond to the application of a voltage and move against their gradients. That says nothing about Stewart's argument of any kind. It's completely irrelevant. It's a red herring, completely, utterly. And I do not need a quantitative anything.
Yeah, it just means that the pH is going to change depending on the flow.
Anyway, okay, right. So still no points for ChatGTP, that thing.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yeah. Now we're almost done now. So number 3, native gating currents are particularly damaging to his position. It's damaging your position.
Currents. Yes, go on.
His response to engineered non-conducting channels, quote, scientists made some...
I've never made such a claim. What the hell are you talking about?
Looks like we're having a little bit of connection loss.
Okay. Hello?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
Okay, just wait.
I can hear you a little bit, but you've been cutting out quite a bit, and also you're frozen on the screen.
Okay. Can you hear me, though? Hello, hello.
I can hear you now. Okay, yeah, cool. It's a little more clearly, but
everything's working at this end. Yeah. Okay. So I've never his claim about I've never made any claim about such a thing ever. What do you mean his claim about what did it say? Engineered?
So, well, it's his response to engineered non-conducting channels. Scientists made something the body doesn't make. Does not address the strongest evidence.
I never said such a thing. And who's to claim what the strongest evidence is? According to whom? On the basis of what? That's a hallucination. It's another misquotation. Anyway, carry on with it. Explain what the problem is and how it debunks me absolutely.
Well, I think it's referring. Well, I think what it's referring to is our previous discussion that we had privately, and it picked up on the note-taking stuff, and I put it in there, and it probably was acknowledging what you had said in response to experiments or definitions and stuff like that we were looking at. And that's probably what was going on, because you've said in this conversation that the scientists are imposing something onto a cell that the body doesn't actually do.
Yeah.
And so now it's objecting to your objection here. Right. So that's what it's now going to do. Is it saying, well, his response to that, which is that scientists made something the body doesn't make, doesn't address the strongest evidence, is what it's saying.
Okay, so who's to say what the strongest evidence is?
In 1973... right. Well, it's going to provide us what it thinks.
Okay, fine. Good. Let's hear that.
Yeah. In 1973, Armstrong and Bezanilla measured small transient gating currents in native squid axons. So this is another one with squid axons.
How'd they do that?
These currents. Yeah. Okay, let's look. All right, you ready? All right, let's take a look at this.
Yeah.
New tab. Nature, currents related to movement of the gating particles of the sodium channels. Okay, abstract.
Yeah.
Let's see if it says it in the abstract, because apparently I'd have to use Sci-Hub or something to get through this.
God. Yeah.
So, all right. So it seems difficult to escape the conclusion that the changes in ionic permeability depend on the movement of some component of the membrane, which behaves as though it had a large charge or dipole moment. With these words, Hodgkin and Huxley predicted the existence of gating currents, charge movement associated with molecular rearrangements that attend the opening and closing of ionic channels in response to changes in the membrane field. Blah, blah, blah. Okay.
Mm.
On repolarization after a voltage step that opened the channels, gating current would be inward. Blah, blah, blah.
Mm.
We report here that by use of signal averaging techniques, we have observed small transient currents, which we believe are the gating currents of the sodium channels.
Signal averaging techniques.
That is what the abstract says at the end.
Right. What kind of signal? Because if you're talking about
that's the
signal
question.
of a current, then you're talking about movement of electricity. How was that measured?
Yeah, it doesn't say, because then you'd have to go through. It says access through your institution. So unless, I mean, you want to pay $199 per year to access science.
I'll tell you how they did it. Silver chloride electrodes.
It's exactly what they did. We all know. We all know.
Yeah, we all know that's what they did. Because the only way to change an electrochemical gradient into a voltage of electricity is to use some redox couple. In this case, it's silver chloride, to change that potential, that electrochemical
potential into
a pure electrical potential. A conversion is required. A piece of kit is required to make that change. It's the electrode. There is still no evidence for any voltage, capacitance of electrical charge, pure electrical charge, or the movement of electricity at all still, because there isn't one still. How do I know? Remove the electrodes and put the copper wire ends across the membrane and read the voltmeter and see what it says. 0.
Says 0, yeah.
Fuck all.
Yeah.
All right, good.
All right. Yeah. Keynes and Rojas, I don't know how to pronounce the J there. Then performed related experiments after removing external Na+ and blocking Na+ conduction with tetrodotoxin.
Okie dokie.
Okay. Yeah. They still detected voltage-dependent displacement currents, whose kinetics, temperature dependence,
using silver chloride electrodes to translate the net electrochemical charges of all kinds into a single net thing, being described as if it were an electrical voltage, which it was not still. Yeah.
So let's skip down to the very last part of this, because we're approaching the end, but this is the most important part. This is the most relevant to what you're saying, because we're both saying, okay, they're basically using the wrong unit. They're converting it with a redox couple with silver and silver chloride electrodes into this voltage, which doesn't actually exist. Right. So this is 5 and 6 of what ChatGPT says. 5, his bare copper wire experiment is not a valid discriminator. You ready for this one? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. A copper wire placed into an electrolyte becomes an electrode. It creates its own metal solution interface, redox behavior, polarization, and junction potential. It is not an electrode-free measurement. That's the first sentence that it gives. In fact, bare copper is generally a worse voltage probe than silver chloride because its interfacial potential is less stable and more easily polarized. There is no direct way to connect an ionic conductor to an electric voltmeter without some form of ionic to electronic interface.
Which just supports my argument.
That's what I'm...
oh my God.
That is a property of the measurement problem, not evidence that the biological potential is fabricated by the interface.
Oh my God. So
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Saying that a thing that is absolutely unchallengeable, absolutely unassailable from first principles is incorrect because it disagrees with the consensus idea about and the desire of pseudoscientists at large to want to parsimoniously describe small plastic forks as if they were spades. And it's me that's the problem here.
Yep.
Okay.
For his proposed test to be meaningful, he would need to specify both electrode materials, reference configuration, input impedance, junction potentials, solution composition, expected half-cell potentials, how the membrane is penetrated, how electrode polarization is controlled, different predictions from the two models.
No,
Copper reads 0.
Yeah.
No, Copper reads 0 would not by itself distinguish the theories.
But in fact, it does still.
Number 6, ionic current is electrical current.
No, it isn't. Still.
On this point, he is simply using a non-standard and physically incorrect definition.
No, the first bit is true. It's non-standard. Incorrect because I'm not following the consensus fallacy doesn't make me incorrect. Being in the minority doesn't make one incorrect. In fact, what I'm saying is correct, absolutely correct and unassailable from first principles in basic physics. And the generally accepted dogma is the one that's fallacious, demonstrably. And I think we've done so quite adequately today.
Yeah, we've shown exactly how. On this point, so he's simply using a non-standard and physically incorrect definition. Electrical current is the rate of transport of electric charge.
Yes.
The carriers can be electrons, positive or negative ions, electron holes, protons, other charged particles. So it's saying that all of them fit under the same umbrella for electricity. Electric current. So it can be carried by positive or negative ions, electrons, whatever. IUPAC explicitly defines the current as movement, or defines current as movement of charged particles, including electrons and ions.
To poke any kind of hole in what I've been correctly saying whatsoever, what you have to do is operationally define the question in such a way as that mandates and necessitates what I'm saying to be incorrect.
To be wrong, to change the definition.
Not in line with the operational definition of the phenomena at moot.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't care how anybody operationally defines electricity. Electricity is the movement of electrons, specifically.
It's broadening. It's broadening what the carriers of electric current can, what it can be. So it's saying that not only is it electrons, but also positive and negative ions, which therefore would mean that you would, as you said, they're changing the definition, they're broadening it to the point where now you must be wrong. It necessitates that your conclusion is wrong. Yeah. And defines an electrolyte as a conducting medium in which current is accompanied by ionic movement. Conventional current is not a discarded hypothesis about which direction electricity really flows. It is a sign of convention, or it is a sign convention. Current points in the direction positive charge would move, or current points in the direction positive charge would move. Electron motion in a metal is therefore opposite to conventional current. Cation motion is in the same direction. Anion motion is opposite.
Yes, he is right. That statement is correct, but it's also irrelevant to what we're talking about. But carry on.
Yeah, he is right that ionic current is not electron flow. He is wrong that electron flow is the only legitimate electric current.
No, I'm not wrong in that regard. No.
So that's basically, I mean, we skipped a little bit of it. I mean, the independent optical evidence undermines the electrode creates it. So saying stuff like silver chloride electrodes absolutely have their own half cell potentials and can introduce offsets, junction potentials, drift, and artifacts. He's correct about that. But transduction is not the same as creation. A microphone converts pressure variations into voltage. That doesn't mean the microphone created the sound. A silver chloride electrode converts an ionic electrochemical signal.
Say that again, because that's hilarious. The microphone didn't create the sound.
A microphone converts pressure variations into voltage. That doesn't mean the microphone created the sound.
But I'm not saying anything remotely similar to that. What the microphone is doing is changing a sound wave into a voltage wave. And then for anybody to hear the sound picked up by the microphone, it has to be converted back into a sound wave by the speaker.
And amplify.
How has that got to do with the electrical analogies that we're talking about? Dear idea.
An AGCL electrode converts an ionic electrochemical signal into an electronic signal suitable for the instrument.
There you go.
The measurement must account for the electrode's own potential, but this doesn't imply that the underlying potential difference was absent. More decisively,
we just said it wasn't electricity.
It's just making more decisively, action potentials have been recorded optically. In 1973, Salzburg, Davila, and Cohen detected impulses from individual living neurons through voltage-sensitive fluorescence rather than a voltage-recording electrode. electrochromic dyes respond through their molecular electronic distribution, interacting with the intramembrane electric field. Experiments have used this response to measure changes in the field in both cellular and lipid membranes.
Mm-hmm.
Optical sensors are not metaphysically perfect. They require calibration and may perturb the preparation, but they are a genuinely independent measurement modality. The convergence of intracellular recording, voltage clamp, impedance/capacitance measurement, gating current recording, optical voltage imaging, and molecular conformational measurements is much stronger than any single electrode experiment.
Nobody's arguing with that, but still, what we're quibbling over here is an operational definition of what is electricity.
Yep, that's really what it comes down to. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, and it comes down to appeal to consensus fallacy, appeal to authority fallacy, and indeed outright fallacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. I'm glad we cleared that up. That was fun. What should we do next week?
Yeah. Well, with the last 5 minutes, do you want to elaborate on what your understanding is of the fourth phase of water? Because I think that was really the only thing we didn't really cover in full detail here.
Okay. Yes. Under certain circumstances, around phospholipid bilayers, it seems, in the human body and the body of other living things as well, of course, that water can be encouraged to change its conformation, its phase, its form, the way it is. And instead of being free-floating molecules, H2O, that move around H2O, in this milieu, they form up into lattice-like structures, hexagonal structures. They form sheets of bound material. Structured water, exclusion zone water, formed water, it's sometimes called, all sorts of different names for the same thing. There is some indication that that does occur, and that conformation, that physical conformation of water molecules interacting with each other in a structural way, is a way of having a different net ionic charge of that material with the bulk water. However, the bulk water, according to the law of electroneutrality, will still respond immediately, so that the net electrochemical charge in that fluid pool, irrespective of whether easy water is there or not, will still be zero.
Yeah.
And on the other side of the membrane, any fluids out there will have a net electrochemical charge in them of exactly zero as well. That occurs by changes in the dissociation so-called constants of all the things in that fluid that dissociate. And the most important of those is the dissociation constant, or the ionization constant, if you like, of water itself, which goes up or down according to requirements in order to maintain this net electrochemical charge of zero.
Yeah. Yeah, ChatGPT doesn't agree with that either, by the way. It just denies reality.
Exactly.
It says that K values cannot change unless you change the temperature.
Unless you change the temperature. Change, because that's one of the things that change. There are four things that can change these constants.
There's four things. That's the thing. It only admits temperature as being one. Whenever I tell it to say, okay, so define how do you calculate a K value, and you realize it's the concentrations of the products and the reactants, whatever. And I go, well, if that's the case, then if you change the quantities of the concentrations between the denominator and the numerator, then they must be able to change. So anything that changes them, according to Le Chatelier's principle, that will change the K values.
Yes. There you go.
That has to happen.
For you. Yeah. Yeah.
That's why I don't know if maybe you've I'm sure that you've seen this in textbooks. They will actually acknowledge this, because they'll put a K value on the paper, and then if anything changes, they'll put like K prime or whatever, like the whole because we recognize that they have changed the value, because it isn't a constant.
That's right. It is not a constant. So to deny the fact, the physical reality in which we find ourselves, the known phenomena that these so-called constants, dissociation, ionization constants, the fact of the matter is they do change. They have to change. There's no two ways about this. So to deny that that's a reality, well, sorry, ChatGTP, you're done here. Sit down, shut up.
Yeah.
Stop being so angry.
If anyone, just with the final minute that we have, if anyone is using AI, I think it's a very powerful tool. It's things very useful, but you need to be careful with how you're using it. If you use it to replace sort of like something like Google Scholar to retrieve papers and read them yourself, that's great. Okay, make sure you use the right keywords. Make sure that you cross-reference a bit. Sure, fine. But if you're using it to optimize your workflow or something, that's great. If you're starting to use it as an arbiter of truth, you need to be. I mean, look, it can maybe give you a good example, a good answer for like, what is volume or like, what is mass? Like basic questions. Don't depend on it for intricate things like this. Like, don't do it. It's not going to work. If you ask it if cholesterol causes heart disease, what answer do you think is going to spit out?
Of course it does.
It's not going to be the right one. Yeah, exactly. So not a bash on AI, but a bash on using it improperly.
Okay, fine.
That's really what my opinion is on this.
Right.
So,
yes.
Well, it was good talking with you on this.
I enjoyed it. That was fun. Hilarious.
Nice. Yeah.
Good.
All right.
All right, my man. It's always a pleasure. Hey, for those that are watching on my channel and don't know how to find Edward for some reason, how do they find you, Edward A Goeke?
Yes. The best place to find me is going to be, of course, YouTube. My name is just type in my name, Edward A Goeke, Goeke. You'll find it there. I used to say Instagram was a good place. I don't prefer to speak on there. I really don't. You can follow me on there if you want at e.goeke_, but those are really the two platforms that I'm on. Everything is on YouTube. You'll find out from there what else I offer and everything like that for your benefit. So
awesome. And tell us about your book.
Oh yes, my book, Contraindicated. Bart, you may actually find that word familiar. This book I wrote in 2024, and really I think you can make an argument that I wrote it in 2023 because I was writing a lot of material for it then. It's a closer look and revision of mainstream health axioms that have perpetuated illness, disorder, and disease for over a century. If you want to know the proper frame by which you should be looking at health through, not the human nutrition science nonsense, and actually from first principles like we've actually been discussing some of today, this is the place to start. And it also provides you with my story on how I even arrived in this space myself, and also what my goals and intentions are, and why you should listen to me.
Awesome. Right. And should people purchase the fine cereal products? And if so, should they get them from you? And if so, how do they do that?
I do believe so. So the best way to do that, the way to acquire these products, especially Stem Enhance Ultra, that's the one product I put the most emphasis on, as well as Plasma Flow. Those can be found at what if I provide you with the link? You put it on the screen instead of me saying it out loud. I think that might be best. Yeah. We can do it that way. But there is a site where you can access that, and then you get a discount that way as long as you sign up for monthly recurring shipments. So
very good, awesome. All right, pleasure. Thanks for being here. See you again next time. Then we'll have some more fun being cerebral and stuff. Very good. I've got to race and do the next thing, and I'm sure you do too.
Sounds good.
All right. Cool, my man.
Yep.
See you then.
See ya.
Ciao.